Good morning, everyone. I'm Julie Livingston, and I'm here for another installment of Quorum Live. Quorum Live is a special broadcast series that we're doing on behalf of the Quorum Initiative, a unique community of female leaders in London, New York, and Washington, D.C. We aim to escalate women up the corporate ladder and by sharing authentic, real information with each other, lifting each other up, and carving a very positive career path for women to succeed today. I'm thrilled to be joined today by Amy Mertz Brown. She is a compliance and ethics expert, legal and operations problem solver. I love that, Amy. And a people person who has been working as an executive, a lawyer, and compliance professional in both the public and private sectors. Currently, she serves as Chief Compliance Officer at Gurstel Law Firm, PC, where she's responsible for regulatory compliance with federal and state law governing creditors' rights throughout the firm's multi-state practice. Earlier in her career, Amy was Chief Compliance Officer at the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, where she led teams of compliance attorneys and professionals to oversee government ethics compliance for all SEC employees. She led the agency's modernization efforts and built new data analytics capabilities. In addition, she successfully developed and implemented the Enterprise Ethics and Compliance Program at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, known as CFP. That's a tongue twister. A startup financial services federal agency where she was instrumental in launching the CFPB's in-house legal department, including hiring and developing diverse professional staff. Amy's passionate about driving mission-critical results by bringing together meticulous legal and operational analysis. She's navigated multifaceted internal and external environments, creating practical and risk-minimizing actionable concepts for senior executives and business unit leaders. Welcome, Amy, and thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You know, you said that, well, we've talked earlier, you said that the pandemic gave women the opportunity to kind of pause and reevaluate how they approach work, how they think about work, and also work-life balance, which we all know, is kind of a funny way to describe it because it's all life, right? Everybody is juggling lots of different things, and women perhaps a lot more. Can you elaborate?
Yeah. Well, from everything I've read and seen, women went through the pandemic, and obviously everybody's at home now working their white collar jobs, and mostly that's who we're talking about is white collar workers, and they had to work from home. They had their kids underfoot, and their spouses working at home too if they have one, and all of that created such an incredible pressure cooker for women, particularly because I think, as all the data shows, women are still doing more than 50% of the household tasks, whether that's kid management, parent management, household management, housekeeping, all those kinds of things. And all of that piled on together. And women got burned out. And I think, every employer and things that I've read, there was an exodus from these jobs from women in the higher ranks or mid-career because they just got burned out. I mean, no wonder, that they just couldn't handle it. So I think that the work-life balance thing just and of course, childcare was non-existent. So I think all of that came together during the pandemic and caused many women to either just up and quit because they just couldn't deal with it, or to really rethink, I'm not happy doing all this. Like, how do I revisit how I've structured my life here,
Right. And kind of where do I want to be?
Yeah. And I can't, maybe it's just the women that I'm connected with, but I'm in Chief and I'm in Quorum Initiative, and I know a lot of women who are my career level, and many women seem to have quit the traditional workplace, corporate America, completely, and started their own, put out their own shingle, whether that's consulting or coaching or what have you, taking their knowledge and giving it back. But I worry that there won't be any women left to give it back to if so many women leave the corporate workplace,
Right. And what can organizations, whether they're private organizations or government organizations, do to make the workplace more palatable and
Yeah,
meaningful for women?
right. Yeah, I mean,
So
I think a couple of the major ways they can do that is deal with the childcare issue, because mid-career women are the ones who are leaving most, and senior women. And if there's no mid-career women there to promote, then the pipeline is broken. So somehow the childcare thing has to get solved, and then the workplace needs to be more flexible for all kinds of people. And I don't want to single women out, because if you
right,
make
of
the
course.
workplace flexible for a working woman, it'll be flexible for everyone else as long as the policies are neutral.
So at the Quorum Initiative, what is so incredible is the sharing, the honest, authentic sharing of our female members about what they've experienced in the workplace, so that we can help each other and lift each other up.
Right.
You've spent many years leading legal and compliance teams in both the public sector and now in the private sector. What are the cultural differences? Can you describe that for us?
Between public and private. Yeah. Well, I want to say it right up front. My experience has been 100% in the financial services agencies, from U.S. Small Business Administration to the CFPB to the SEC. So that's an alphabet soup. But I haven't worked in, the Veterans Administration or the Department of Homeland Security or any of these other large agencies that are not in the financial services area. So I want to make clear that my experience is really from the financial services area, and I do
And
believe there's a
is that
difference.
area more male dominated, would you say?
Yes, well, probably not more so than some of the civilian support for military. That's probably more heavily male
Okay.
dominated, or NASA or someplace like that. But the financial services agencies definitely are dominated by men, traditionally. That's changing, definitely changing over time, but also just dominated by people that have private sector experience that come into the government and serve in different ways. So, for example, at the Small Business Administration at the beginning of my career, many of the men in there were former bankers. So you have a mix of backgrounds instead of people that have kind of come up through the government. But I would say that the government is typically a place where you have a lot of opportunity for advancement if you're interested. If you show initiative and drive and motivation to excel and to continue with your career growth, you will get those opportunities. Either they'll be advertised, or you can ask for them, or they'll be given to you. One of those. In the private sector, I only have 2.5 years experience at one place, so I have a limited scope. But I would say that it is more of a traditional setting, and so maybe a little bit harder because the opportunities aren't as defined as they are in the public sector.
That's interesting. I mean, when you move from the public sector to the private sector, Amy, was that like a culture shock for you?
Well, it wasn't so much for me, mostly because I've been working with lawyers almost my entire career, and
Yeah.
with private sector people that had private sector experience. So it really was fairly seamless for me. The people that I work with now are they're in the financial services industry, so it didn't feel like a huge shock to me, which surprises a lot of people. But I think it was, again, given the agencies that I work for, that's why it was that way.
So, where are the opportunities for women today in terms of public and private sector? Are like, is there one that is perhaps more easily navigable for women, and how?
Yeah. I can speak to the public sector more broadly. Most federal agencies have various advertised opportunities. Now, the first challenge, of course, is getting into the federal government, which is a bit of a challenge in and of
That's not
itself.
easy. Yeah.
No, and particularly it's a lot easier if you're early in your career and you join at an entry level, and or if you're in a specialty area. Like for attorneys, it's a little bit easier because they have a special hiring authority that isn't the same as the competitive civil service, or if you have some rare, like rare kind of set of knowledge and experience, then you might
Right.
get to
I mean, I was
hired.
recently talking to another Quorum member who was just is in a career transition, and she is very interested in the public sector, saw a phenomenal opportunity, and just the application process in itself really put her to the test. I mean,
Yes.
she had to do an awful amount, a lot of research, and um, even when she thought she really had nailed it, she did get, a rejection letter, and she actually followed it up and got somebody on the phone, and they explained why.
Oh,
And
good.
it was really fascinating to me because it was the minute nuances of the words, the language that she used in her presentation, I'll call it, that disqualified her. So really every nuance seems to count.
Yeah. You really, she sounds like she applied for a senior executive job, which is
Yes.
another sort of way to get into the government. I think it's really helpful to network with people who are already in the senior executive service in the federal government and have them read your statement, or hire an expert, somebody, because you can hire people to help you put those packages together who kind of know what the government screeners are looking for. But it's just
Ah,
like the private sector. It's like they use screening devices, especially for jobs that have many applicants, and some of those screening devices could be automated. So it is kind of a bit of a hurdle to get over some of those initial um, obstacles. And that's why I'm saying, like, if you're a newer person, first 5 years of experience in your career, it's actually an easier time to get into the government and
and so then
applying for
you're kind of in,
yes.
you're
If
already in the organization, and it becomes easier to to
take advantage
identify
take
opportunities to
advantage of
move up.
their opportunities. Correct. Or you could even get into one of those opportunities. For example, like the presidential management intern program at the White House or anywhere in the government, they have an internship program or different things like that, where it's like it's an entry level. They have like financial analyst programs at the CFPB and some of the other financial agencies that are looking for people with like business and maybe an MBA or business experience, and getting them into that program. So look for those kind of one-off opportunities here and there that are advertised. They're all advertised. And then, but once you get into the competitive service, you stay a certain period of time, then you kind of become qualified for the federal service.
Okay.
And then basically you can come and go as you wish, because you're always going to be competitive because you already have that certification, for lack of a better word. So that's one way to think of it. If you want to get yourself into a government program early in your career, then you can always come and go as you wish. Whereas getting in there later in your career, unless you're at the executive level, it's much more difficult. But once you're in the federal government, they have leadership development programs. They have programs to help you develop to become an executive. And those kinds of certifications can take you anywhere in the federal government, not just the agency you're at. There's one program that I saw at SEC that was really successful, was taking people that came into the government in a like an administrative assistant type level, and qualify them to become an analyst, and gave them like 2 years full of training and opportunities to do work assignments, and then qualify themselves for that sort of next career level of analyst job, which is a huge thing for somebody who doesn't have a college degree, or they're the first in their family to have a federal job. And those are some really amazing opportunities that I saw at the SEC. I had an employee in my office who went through that program, and it was incredible. So
So
those are just some examples.
now that's really fascinating. So I think what you're saying is that there's sort of more of an intentional process for women and people in general to
Right.
level up as they go through their career.
Right. So that's kind of going back to what I said. If you show motivation and desire, like if you applied for that program at the SEC, for example, and then really, worked it, now you've qualified yourself for an entirely different set of a job level, which is going to pay more and have more career advancement opportunities by itself. So it's those things are structured, yes, and you can apply for them, you can do them, and it's kind of like going through a leadership training, but inside the federal government, and they pay for everything. So
Wow.
it's there's a lot of great opportunities like that for women of all levels and in their experience level to be able to really expand their career opportunities.
And how is that different in the private sector, would you say?
Well, I mean, again, from my experience, which is only one organization, it's a little bit more haphazard. Like if you raise your hand and sort of say, "Hey, I want to expand," somebody kind of needs to pick you or tap you on the shoulder and identify you. There's not a structured program, at least not in my much, very small company, to do that kind of a thing where the company would pay for certain kinds of training. So I think that and maybe larger companies like big financial institutions maybe have those, but I don't know that firsthand.
What else could women do for themselves, whether they're working in the public or private sector, to lift each other up? And what kinds of or external support systems do they need, Amy?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think n- networking with any group like Quorum Initiative and many other groups like that is a wonderful way to do it. I personally in my career I've really needed that mentoring and giving mentorship and just exchanging information. Women do that sort of a little bit more naturally, probably, but I've certainly had some wonderful mentors and networking opportunities with all kinds of people. And you can find that outside of your current company. You can find it in a lot of different ways. I um, I know that well, there's some I don't remember the exact amount, but there's some thing where it says, you should be investing in yourself a certain percentage of your income every year for your own betterment if you're interested in
Ah,
expanding your career, like whether it's 10% or whatever. And I've seen some women in chief, another organization I'm in, that have really put that to the test. And they purchase training, they purchase networking opportunities, they join groups that cost money, whatever the case may be, to really invest in their own career. And I love that idea.
well, it's interesting that you said that because at Quorum, we just did a poll on that subject about investing in your own personal and professional development. And the results were really fascinating. And that is that 40% of women spend more than $2,500 a year on personal development, and 40% spend less than 500.
Huh.
So only
Wow.
19% are spending somewhere in the middle, which is not good. And it shows
Yeah.
you women are still not really investing in themselves.
Right. And I really think that a lot of that is extremely challenging for mid-career women who are, just trying to keep their head above water. I mean, the idea of another thing, even if it's for their own benefit, is just overwhelming. I mean, I remember 15 years ago when I was in the throes of all that and how it was like I can barely get through a day. I mean, I remember when my kids were young and I had an opportunity in the government, it's called a detail, where you sort of get plunked into an executive job or some other job for a period of time, like usually 60 days to 90 days. And I was doing one of those, and I had a boss who told me, this was at Treasury Department. He said, "Don't tell anyone that you have to leave." And because I said I would love this opportunity, and I'll work my ass off for you. So, excuse my French. But I have to leave at 5:30. because I have to go pick my kids
Of
up in
course, right.
daycare. And if I'm 1 minute late, it's like, $15 a minute or whatever. And I said, I'll get back on online. This was BlackBerry days. So, I'll work my BlackBerry in the evenings, but I have to leave at 5:30. And he told me, don't tell anyone you're leaving at 5:30. Just kind of like slink out the side door because it'll look bad. That's what women are dealing with in their mid-career level.
And women are still dealing with it.
I know. Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess things have changed a little bit, but not enough to really accommodate the realities of women's lives.
Yes. I think women are just pushing past some of those obstacles more than they did probably in my day, in my mid-career level days. But that doesn't mean that it's easier or that the workplace is better designed for them. They're just pushing past it more. But that's not the way things should be working. It should be that the workplace should be restructuring and again, it's not just working women, it's working parents, it's working anyone that has life outside of work that they have to deal with and balance with their
Yeah, and
work life.
caregiving responsibilities, whether it's for an aging parent or children.
Yeah.
Amy, how, one of the things that you brought up for me was that it's so important, especially as women, we're juggling a lot between our personal lives, our professional, to really vet the kinds of networking groups that you join. For example, I was involved in an organization in the communications industry for more than 20 years. And although I did get certain things out of it, now that I look back, I found that the women in that organization really sugarcoated things. And so they weren't really sharing what they were learning along the way with each other on a real level. And that is one of the things I have found so refreshing about the Quorum Initiative is that we really, I don't know, women just let their hair down in this group and really share the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it is empowering. It makes each of us feel like we're not so alone. And that, they also will share how they've kind of moved beyond those challenges.
Yes, I
So,
agree.
so joining any old networking group really isn't the answer. It's really vetting what the people in that group are about and what they will give to each other.
Right. And I think, it really starts with looking at yourself first. What do I need? Do I need just people to support me and not give me career advice? Do I need to meet more people in my industry? Do I need to, do I want to get ahead? And what does that next step look like? And what group will help me get there more? So it helps to kind of know what you're looking for, right? Because a networking group in your industry, even if it's not really personally beneficial to you in terms of supporting you as a person, but if it's designed to help you get to meet more people in your industry because that'll help your career advancement, that might be worth it. But just
Right,
understand
right.
why
A
you're
good
in the
point.
group.
Yeah,
Why,
good
what do
point.
you need out of it? Right. And you might need two groups, one for
That's
the
true. That's
personal
true.
and one for the professional.
So where can people look for these public sector opportunities? Where are good places for them to find out about it?
Yeah, the
I
best
mean,
way
certainly
to
I would think LinkedIn.
yes, although I would say the best way to do it is go to usajobs.gov and register a profile there and ask for jobs to be sent to you
I
that
see.
fit your profile. That's the best. Another good way is to target specific agencies. If you have any interest, like if you're interested in healthcare issues, then target agencies that are in that space, like HHS or the VA. If you're interested in financial services, then target those agencies. So, and you can actually go onto those agencies' own websites and register to be notified of their career opportunities and programs. And that, sometimes they don't always advertise things on USA Jobs, so it's best to do both if you want to target an agency. If you're in an operations field and you really don't care which agency, then probably usajobs.gov is your best bet.
That's awesome. And just to wrap things up, how would you position opportunities in the public sector versus the private sector? what do you think that, which area do you think is more conducive to lifting women up and identifying and help them move up the corporate ladder?
Well, again, I really, from my experience, I think the public sector is a really great place to do that, and especially if you get in at the ground level, and establish yourself there. I think it's a great place to start a career, and then get as much as you can out of it, and then move into the private sector and back and forth. I've seen women do that. It tends a lot of people tend to stay in the government though because it does have a pretty good work-life balance, and the benefits are great, and things like that. A lot of vacation time, things that the private sector is not as good at. So I would recommend public sector for that kind of thing myself.
Okay. Amy, thank you so much for joining me today. This was a really informative conversation. And for those of you watching who are interested in learning more about the Quorum Initiative, go to the website quoruminitiative.com, and hope to see you at one of our new events coming up.
Thank you.